Throughout the ages, masculine archetypes have guided men towards strength, responsibility, and purpose. These weren't merely social constructs, but profound psychological patterns etched into the collective unconscious. Yet today, we witness a troubling transformation: the dissolution of these archetypal foundations without adequate replacement. The modern man increasingly finds himself untethered from the ancestral wisdom that once guided masculine development. This disconnection manifests in concrete behaviors we observe in young men today. The avoidance of necessary challenges, the postponement of adult responsibilities, and the retreat into digital distractions represent not merely personal choices, but symptoms of a deeper archetypal crisis. These men aren't simply making poor decisions. They're responding to the absence of meaningful initiation into mature masculine consciousness. Society has undergone a profound symbolic shift in its relationship with masculinity. What was once honored as strength is now often labeled toxic. What was respected as protective is reframed as controlling. This creates a state of psychological confusion, where young men receive contradictory messages about their own nature. The masculine psyche, when denied proper channels for expression, doesn't simply disappear. It becomes distorted, appearing in shadow forms or retreating into passivity. The absence of authentic masculine figures creates what I would call a father wound in the collective psyche. Without these models demonstrating the integration of power and compassion, young men lack living examples of the mature masculine. They're left with caricatures from media or the wounded expressions of masculinity from men who themselves never completed their psychological development. This father hunger drives many toward either hyper-masculine compensation or feminine identification, neither providing genuine wholeness. The path forward requires neither a return to rigid patriarchal structures nor an abandonment of masculine principles. Instead, we must help men rediscover and integrate their authentic masculine energy in ways that serve both individual development and collective harmony. This journey involves confronting shadow aspects, developing conscious relationship with feminine energies, both internal and external, and finding contemporary expressions of timeless masculine virtues. Through this process, men can reclaim their psychological birthright while adapting it to modern realities. Section 1. Systematically dismantled. You're growing up in a world that has systematically dismantled the traditional pathways to manhood. Throughout history, every culture recognized the psychological necessity of clear transitions from boyhood to manhood. These weren't arbitrary customs. They were sophisticated psychological tools that helped boys integrate their masculine energy in healthy ways. Think about it. Native American vision quests, Spartan training systems, Australian Aboriginal walkabouts. All these traditions understood something modern society has forgotten. They knew that without clear challenges and thresholds to cross, men remain psychologically boyish, regardless of their physical age. Today, these meaningful initiations have been replaced with shallow substitutes. You graduate from school, maybe get a job or apartment, but these modern milestones lack the psychological depth that transforms a boy's identity at the core level. Without true initiation, you're left navigating manhood without a map. They've created a parenting culture that actively prevents the natural development of masculine resilience. Overprotective parents, while well-intentioned, rob their sons of essential developmental experiences. When every obstacle is removed, every conflict managed, and every failure prevented, boys never develop psychological calluses, the emotional resilience needed to function in a challenging world. This isn't about harsh parenting or needless suffering. It's about understanding that certain forms of stress and struggle are necessary for growth. When boys are denied the opportunity to test their capabilities, make consequential decisions, and experience failure within a supportive environment, they remain in psychological dependency. Their advancement into adulthood isn't just delayed, it's fundamentally compromised. Boys need progressive challenges matched to their developing capabilities, not protection from life's natural difficulties. Digital technology has hijacked the masculine drive for achievement and conquest, redirecting it into hollow virtual experiences. Your brain can't distinguish between real accomplishment and the simulated versions offered by video games, pornography, and social media. Each notification, level up, or visual reward triggers the same dopamine pathways that evolved to motivate authentic achievement. This creates a devastating psychological trap. Why struggle through the messy, difficult process of real-world mastery when digital alternatives offer the same neurochemical reward without the effort? This dopamine addiction doesn't just waste time, it fundamentally rewires motivation systems. As your brain acclimates to instant gratification, the delayed rewards of discipline, skill development, and real connection seem increasingly unappealing. The masculine energy that once built civilizations now often exhausts itself in digital shadows, leaving young men feeling simultaneously stimulated and empty. Section 2. Unhealthy extremes. Your romantic relationships suffer directly from this crisis of masculinity. When you haven't developed emotional maturity, you bring dependency rather than strength to your partnerships. Many men oscillate between two unhealthy extremes, either becoming completely passive, seeking mother figures rather than partners, or overcompensating with controlling behavior to mask deep insecurity. This creates a painful cycle. You feel inadequate, which leads to relationship problems, which further confirms your sense of inadequacy. Women instinctively sense this imbalance. They may verbally claim to want softness, but they respond to centered, grounded masculine energy, not because of cultural conditioning, but because balanced relationships require polarities. Without healthy masculine energy, relationships stagnate or become battlegrounds where neither person feels truly seen or respected. The lack of clear purpose creates an existential vacuum at the center of many men's lives. They drift through their 20s and 30s without direction, changing jobs frequently, avoiding commitment, and feeling vaguely dissatisfied without understanding why. This isn't laziness. It's the natural result of never facing challenges significant enough to reveal their capabilities and values. Purpose isn't something you find through endless self-reflection. It emerges through action, challenge, and service beyond yourself. Without these experiences, men remain trapped in an extended adolescence, seeking constant stimulation and novelty rather than depth and meaning. The psychological cost is immense: chronic anxiety, addiction, and a haunting sense that they're spectators in their own lives. Fear of failure paralyzes you in subtle, pervasive ways that may not be immediately obvious. When you've rarely experienced meaningful failure or been taught how to process it, even small risks feel threatening to your core identity. This creates patterns of chronic procrastination, endless planning without action, and a tendency to abandon projects at the first sign of difficulty. Notice how you instinctively create elaborate justifications for avoiding challenges, convincing yourself you're not ready, you need more information, or the timing isn't right. This isn't rational strategy, but psychological protection. The tragic irony is that by avoiding failure so completely, you fail by default at the things that matter most. Your potential remains theoretical rather than actualized, and deep down, you know it. The disconnection from healthy masculine identity manifests in rising rates of depression and profound identity confusion. Men who can't access their native masculine energy often feel fundamentally wrong, as if their natural instincts for protection, provision, and assertive action are somehow defective. This creates a psychological splitting where natural masculine drives are either suppressed entirely or expressed in immature, destructive ways. They seek validation through external sources, social media, romantic partners, career status, because they lack internal reference points for their worth as men. The collective impact is staggering: declining workforce participation, delayed family formation, and communities lacking male leadership and contribution. These aren't just personal struggles, but social indicators of a profound psychological disorientation affecting an entire generation. But understanding these impacts is only half the journey. Section 3. Influences. The journey back to authentic masculinity begins with a fundamental psychological shift from external blame to internal responsibility. This isn't about denying real societal challenges. It's about recognizing that waiting for external conditions to change is a psychological dead end. Your power lies in your response, not your circumstances. Start by identifying where victim mentality has crept into your thinking. Are you telling yourself stories where you're powerless? Do you attribute your struggles primarily to parents, the economy, or women's expectations? Without rejecting legitimate obstacles, consciously shift your focus to the question: given these realities, what actions can I take today? This psychological reorientation isn't merely motivational. It fundamentally alters your relationship with reality. By claiming agency, even in small areas, you activate neural pathways associated with confidence and capability. Begin with basic responsibilities: your physical space, financial decisions, and daily habits. As you consistently honor these commitments to yourself, you'll notice a psychological transformation. Your sense of efficacy grows, creating a positive feedback loop where responsibility breeds confidence, which enables greater responsibility. They've engineered digital platforms specifically to hijack your dopamine system, but breaking free is entirely possible with the right approach. Digital addiction works by exploiting your brain's reward pathways, the same circuits that evolved to help you seek food, social connection, and reproductive opportunities. Reclaiming these pathways requires a strategic reset. Begin with a digital detox, a minimum 2-week period of drastically reduced screen time, especially social media, video games, and pornography. This isn't permanent abstinence, but a psychological reset that allows your dopamine sensitivity to return. The first days will feel genuinely uncomfortable as your brain protests the absence of easy stimulation. Push through this discomfort. It's the feeling of neural pathways beginning to reorganize. Once baseline sensitivity returns, implement structural changes. Remove notifications. Use website blockers. Establish tech-free zones and times in your home. Simultaneously, replace digital stimulation with physical activity, face-to-face connection, and challenging hobbies that provide authentic satisfaction. The goal isn't ascetic self-denial, but redirecting your masculine energy toward genuine achievement and connection that feeds rather than depletes your psychological resources. Your masculine development requires both internal psychological work and external challenges that force growth. The blueprint for this development appears across cultures and throughout history. It involves progressively facing difficulties that reveal your capabilities. Begin by identifying areas where you consistently avoid discomfort. Physical challenges, social situations, professional risks, or emotional vulnerability. Then deliberately move toward these discomforts in measured steps. If physical weakness concerns you, begin a progressive strength training program. If social anxiety limits you, start with small interactions and gradually increase the stakes. For each area of avoidance, create a series of escalating challenges that stretch but don't overwhelm your current capacity. Crucially, find men further along the path who can provide both guidance and accountability. These aren't necessarily perfect men, but those who demonstrate the qualities you seek to develop. Whether through formal mentorship, male friendships, or even studying the lives of admirable men throughout history, these models provide both practical wisdom and psychological reassurance that the path, though difficult, is walkable. Their example proves that authentic masculinity isn't theoretical, but embodied. What if the challenges you've been avoiding are precisely the doorways to the man you're capable of becoming?